obviously fine with the draw. Is Hikaru fine with the draw as well? No, Magnus is not fine with the draw. What a bold decision by the world champion. He brings the rook up to a4, but immediately puts it back on f4, thinking better of his bold decision, because Hikaru, he's got all of his pawns well defended by that rook on d6, and now it's Nakamura's turn to play for a win as he pushes b5 and supports the pawn of the rook, and bishop drops back to g2. Magnus harassing black's queenside pawns with his bishop, and now the pawn on d5 is untouchable because of rook d6. What a vicious trap by Hikaru in his opponent's time pressure. Magnus now with 10 seconds on the clock, and hesitation there as he moves the bishop back to f1 for the umpteenth time. Rook a2 by Hikaru attacking c2, and now a bishop trade. And who benefits from this bishop trade? It's hard to tell. Now white is threatening rook f4 up to f5, forking the pawns on d5 and h5. Hikaru has to prevent that, and he does by moving his king up to g6. And now it's Magnus's turn to expand on the king side, g4, leading to some frustration by Nakamura. And the rook, is it going to move up to g5, checking the king and forcing it back to e6? And now Magnus with a passed pawn on h4. Is he going to push that passed pawn? Not just yet. He plays rook g1, preventing black's rook from traveling to the king side via a1. Now Hikaru, the one who looks a little bit frustrated. White wants to put that rook behind the pawn on h4, and the pawn is going to rumble up the board, up the runway. Rook a3 by Hikaru, pinning the pawn on c3, and Magnus brings the king back to d2. Hikaru desperately generating counterplay on the queen side, fiddling and twirling that pawn. Rook up to g3 by Magnus, offering a rook trade. Who benefits in the event of that rook trade? I think it was white. Now the rook gets behind the pawn, but Hikaru is in time to stop the pawn with his king. He is just in time, tempo for tempo, and now the pawn on h6 is immobilized. And I think the game is very likely to fizzle out into a draw. Rook to a6, winning the pawn on h6. Magnus wins the pawn on b4, and now the sides only have 2 pawns left, and they're about to have 1 pawn left. King to e2, rook e6, check, back and forth go the rooks. Rook takes d5, rook takes f2. This is a dead draw, even though black's king is further away from white's pawn than white's king from black's pawn, because black's rook is more than capable of holding that pawn back, and the sides repeating moves, looking at each other.